In early 2022, a young couple from Colorado, Andrew and Melissa Kent, purchased the late Kelly Preston's former home in Clearwater, Florida. The Mediterranean-style estate, not far from the Church of Scientology headquarters, had sat quietly on the market for months. It was beautiful arched doorways, a backyard that opened to the bay, citrus trees lined along the fence, and warm Spanish tiles throughout. Andrew was a freelance tech consultant. Melissa, a former flight attendant, was hoping to open a home-based yoga studio. They just had their first child, Ava, and were looking for a fresh start near the ocean. The agent disclosed the basics. The house had been owned by Kelly Preston and John Travolta for over a decade, though Kelly had passed away in 2020 after a quiet battle with cancer. It's a peaceful place, the agent assured them. Full of love and history. That phrase stuck with Melissa. Full of love and history. But from the moment they moved in, it felt like something more than history lingered. At first, the disturbances were small. Melissa would hear music playing faintly from nowhere, soft jazz, or sometimes a woman humming. It always seemed to come from the second-floor guest room, the one with the bay window and the old dressing mirror. They hadn't furnished it yet, but she would find the mirror fogged as if someone had just breathed on it. Andrew, practical and grounded, chalked it up to acoustics or old pipes. But Melissa grew quiet, withdrawn. She told her sister over the phone that the house felt like a place still waiting for someone to come back. One night, while rocking Ava to sleep, she noticed something odd in the hallway. A shadow just behind her, in the reflection of the nursery window. It looked like a woman with shoulder-length hair, wearing a soft blouse and standing very still. But when she turned, the hallway was empty. That same week, Melissa found a drawer in the kitchen that wouldn't stay closed. Every morning it was open again, just slightly, as if someone had taken a spoon and forgotten to put it back. Then came the whispering. The guest room upstairs had been Kelly's meditation space. According to an old neighbor, she'd spent hours in there, reading, writing letters, playing soft records. Melissa only found this out after a chance conversation during a walk. That night, she returned to the room alone and turned on her phone's voice recorder. She sat in silence for 10 minutes. When she played the audio back, she heard something that made her heart stop. At minute 6, a voice clear, warm, and unmistakably female spoke softly. "He doesn't believe. But you do." She didn't tell Andrew. Not yet. But from then on, Melissa started leaving a small candle burning in that room. She placed fresh flowers by the mirror and started speaking aloud when she passed the door. "Hello, Kelly," she'd say, unsure if it was comfort or madness she was indulging in. The tension in the house, however, grew. Andrew had his first experience weeks later. It was around 3 a.m. when he woke to the sound of footsteps, bare feet moving quickly across the downstairs hallway. Thinking it was Melissa or an intruder, he grabbed a flashlight and went to check. But no one was there. The doors were locked. The baby monitor hadn't picked up anything. The next morning, he confronted Melissa about sneaking around at night. She told him she hadn't left bed. Her voice trembled. I think she never left." He finally agreed to speak with a local paranormal investigator, someone Melissa had found discreetly through a nearby metaphysical bookstore. The woman's name was Carla Navarro. She came in with incense, 2 cameras, and a quiet reverence for the home. After a long silence in the upstairs room, Carla said simply, "She loved this place. She fought to stay. And something in here remembers her." She advised no exorcism, no cleansing. "She's not malevolent, but the house needs closure. She doesn't know she's gone." The Kents decided to do something they hadn't considered before. They gathered in the guest room one evening, just the 3 of them. Baby Ava asleep in her mother's arms, and lit a circle of candles. Melissa read aloud a letter she had written, thanking Kelly for the home, for the beauty she left behind, and promising they would take care of it. Then, they played one of Kelly's favorite songs, something Melissa had tracked down through an old interview, Harvest Moon by Neil Young. As the music played, a breeze passed through the room, though the windows were shut tight. The candles flickered, and the mirror slowly cleared of fog. And for the first time since moving in, the house felt still. Aftermath. There have been no further incidents in the months since. The room upstairs is now a reading nook, filled with plants and soft light. The mirror remains, and Melissa often says good morning to it, just in case. Andrew remains skeptical, though he admits the energy in the house has changed. It feels like someone finally left the party, and the house is quieter now, peaceful. But if you walk by at night and the breeze is just right, you might still hear the faintest hum of a woman's voice, singing softly to herself in the dark. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story. The sun was sinking low over the Gulf of Mexico when Melissa Kent first saw the house. That Florida light so heavy and golden it made everything seem nostalgic, poured over the red clay roof tiles, the curved archways, and the swaying silhouette of palms at the edge of the lawn. It wasn't the kind of house she imagined they'd end up in. It was too romantic, too full of memory, like something out of a movie set in another life. She stepped out of the car and pressed her sandal into the gravel. Andrew was still fiddling with the baby seat, trying to soothe Ava's sudden crying spell, but Melissa wasn't listening anymore. She'd stepped forward, onto the flagstone path, and toward the wide wooden door with the iron knocker shaped like a lion's head. It wasn't just beautiful, it felt familiar. The realtor, a slick man named Jeff in a linen suit that never wrinkled, was already halfway through his sales pitch, built in 1939, but totally restored original Spanish mission design. 5 beds, 4.5 baths, dock access to Clearwater Bay. This place has hosted a few legends over the years. But the most recent owner? You've probably heard of her. Kelly Preston, actress, wife of John Travolta. Melissa had. Everyone had. She remembered reading about her death during the pandemic. Remembered how quietly it had happened. No headlines, just a notice and then silence. Jeff smiled with just enough sadness to seem human. She passed in the house, I believe, peacefully, in the upstairs bedroom. Andrew finally caught up, baby on his shoulder, already scanning the porch with a tech guy's eye for where the smart locks and cameras would go. You said it's been vacant a while? He asked. Since late 2020. Travolta sold it through a family trust. It's been on and off the market. Some buyers came through, but you know how these things go. Beautiful places like this? Sometimes they just need the right people. Melissa looked up at the second floor. One of the shutters was slightly open. She felt like someone was watching. Not in a threatening way, just present. She should have turned around then. Not because she was afraid, but because some part of her, deep and maternal and primal, understood that the house was not truly empty. But she stepped forward anyway. The first few days were filled with that dizzying blur of new homeownership boxes stacked like soft barricades in every hallway. Ava's toys scattered across cool stone floors. The sound of Andrew drilling something into the wall at nearly every hour of the day. The space was large, oddly echoey. Their voices didn't seem to stick to the walls. Sound drifted here, got lost. Melissa began to explore slowly. There was something sacred about the layout. The hallway upstairs curved slightly, as if the architect wanted to trick the mind into believing the house never truly ended. The guest rooms all had strange little alcoves and closets in places that didn't quite make sense. One closet was locked when they moved in, even though the house had been empty. Jeff had sworn by it. Andrew had to pry it open. Inside was nothing but a single white leather glove and an old Polaroid stuck to the back wall, the image too faded to make sense of. Melissa stared at it for a long time before tossing it out. There was a warmth to the house in the daytime, the kind of warmth that invited barefoot mornings and late afternoon naps. But at night that changed. Started slowly. A cold spot in the hallway that never moved. The ceiling fan in the master bedroom clicking on at 3:14 a.m. Precisely, no matter how many times Andrew reprogrammed the circuit. And always that sense especially strong around Ava's nursery that someone else was in the house with them. Not hostile, not even curious, just waiting. Melissa kept that to herself. One afternoon, while unpacking a box labeled yoga stuff, Melissa wandered into the guest room at the far end of the hallway, the one with the arched window that overlooked the bay. The room still smelled faintly of vanilla and dried lavender. She didn't know why. She hadn't placed anything scented there. The mirror stood in the far corner. A wide, Antique piece with delicate carving along the top that curled like ocean waves. It hadn't been in the house listing, but when they moved in, it was just there leaning against the wall as if it had never left. Melissa didn't like mirrors. Not large ones. Not ones with stories. She'd only been in the room for a minute, but already she felt watched. Not in the way she did outside. This was deeper, as though her presence was being weighed. She looked into the mirror. For a moment, nothing but her reflection. Then, the glass fogged slowly, quietly, like the breath of someone standing directly in front of her. Her skin tingled. She looked around. No windows open. No air vent. No temperature change. Just her. And something else. She backed out of the room without another word, without even turning her back fully. She didn't go in again for a week. The sound of the sea was ever-present in Clearwater. Not the crashing sort Melissa missed that from her childhood summers in California, but the lazy, lapping rhythm of water meeting land like breath against skin. At night, when the baby monitor blinked green and Andrew was lost in the glow of his laptop, Melissa would stand by the kitchen window and listen to it. That faint hush, that distant pulse. It was calming, yes, but in this house it often felt too quiet. It had been 2 weeks since the mirror had fogged in the guest room, and Melissa had begun to convince herself that it had been condensation humidity, Florida's strange magic. Nothing more. But still, she avoided that part of the house. She never voiced it to Andrew, not yet. There was something delicate between them these days, like glass beneath their feet. Ava had colic, money was tight, and the house spacious as it was didn't quite feel like theirs. One morning, after a sleepless night with the baby, Melissa padded into the kitchen before dawn. She moved slowly, half dreaming, fingers brushing the granite countertop. The light outside was just starting to bleed through the slatted blinds, painting thin golden lines across the tile. That's when she noticed the drawer. It was open, barely, just a few inches, enough to see the glint of silver inside. She could have sworn it had been shut when they went to bed. She remembered clearing up the counter, putting away the spoons, shutting every drawer with a soft click. She closed it without thinking. The next morning it was open again. Same drawer, same angle, no sign of disturbance. By the 4th day it had become a ritual: wake, feed Ava, close the drawer. She didn't tell Andrew. He'd laugh. Blame sleep deprivation. Blame her. But deep down something else was growing. A dull awareness, like the beginning of a bruise beneath the skin. It was near the end of March when Melissa began hearing the humming. It came during the softest hours of the day, early afternoon, when Ava napped and Andrew was on conference calls in the study. It was faint, like music from a neighbor's house carried on a warm breeze. But the notes were inside the house, always from the same direction. The second floor, that corner room. The one with the mirror. It was a woman's voice, humming, sometimes singing in a low murmur, barely audible, just enough to tease memory. A lullaby? Maybe an old jazz standard. It always disappeared if she tried to follow it, as if the sound itself was shy. On the 4th day, she pressed her ear to the guest room door. She didn't dare open it. Silence. But as she walked back down the hall, she swore she heard a whisper behind her. A soft, clear voice. Just one word. Stay. She didn't tell Andrew. Not even that night, when she lay awake beside him, staring up at the ceiling fan as it spun in lazy circles. He was changing. She could feel it. The house was doing something to him too, but differently. He became more irritable, more dismissive, more distracted. When she tried to explain how the light in the guest room sometimes looked different, paler, colder, no matter the hour, he only nodded vaguely, eyes on his screen. It's a new house, he muttered. We're just adjusting. The mind plays tricks. We're tired. That word again. Tired. As if it explained the way her dreams had turned strange. The way Ava would sometimes stare at corners of the room as if something was there, and her lips would twitch like she wanted to speak, though she was only 6 months old. Melissa began keeping a journal. Nothing elaborate. Just a little green notebook she kept in the kitchen drawer, the one that wouldn't stay closed. She started noting small things. The time she heard the humming. the strange shape in the fog on the mirror, the dream she'd had about a woman standing at the foot of her bed, crying silently with her hands over her mouth. But then something changed. One entry, written in her careful script, read, April 2nd. Woke at 3:14. Ava crying. Walked down the hallway. Guest room door was open. I'm sure we left it shut. Inside, the record player was on. Soft jazz, couldn't identify the song. Smelled lavender. Walked over to turn it off. Power cord wasn't plugged in. She stopped writing after that. It wasn't until Andrew saw something himself that she allowed herself to speak freely. It was late, nearly 1 a.m. when he came into the bedroom, face pale, hands shaking slightly. He said he'd gone downstairs for water, had passed through the living room, and seen something reflected in the dark television screen. A woman, standing behind him. He turned. Nothing there. But in the glass, in that glossy black surface, she had been clear as day. Shoulder-length blonde hair, soft blouse, one hand raised as if in greeting or warning. Melissa said nothing at first, just took his hand and led him upstairs. And for the first time in weeks, they entered the guest room together. The air inside was cooler, not cold, just quiet, still in a way that suggested it had always been like that even before they moved in. The mirror was still there, the window wide, and beneath it, on the windowsill, a small indentation like someone had sat there. Recently, they stood in silence for a long time. Then Melissa whispered, I think it's her. Andrew didn't ask who. He didn't need to. The house didn't creak. The house didn't groan. But as they left the room, the door slowly, softly, closed behind them. By itself. The room upstairs became a presence in their lives. Not a place, not a space, but a personality. It had rhythms and moods. It welcomed and withdrew. It breathed. Andrew, once skeptical, now avoided it with quiet respect, while Melissa, touched by something more intimate, began to treat it like one might treat a living relative whose memory lingered just below the surface of speech. It was the neighbor, an older woman named Darla who walked her dog past the house each morning, who finally gave them a piece of the puzzle. She waved over the fence one morning as Melissa was gathering oranges from the backyard tree. Darla's voice was bright, a little too high for her age. You the new folks in Kelly's house? She called. Melissa gave a careful nod. We are. Darla's face softened. She loved that place, especially the room with the big mirror where she meditated. She'd sit up there for hours, just sit and write or light candles. She used to say it was the only place where the noise stopped. Melissa felt a chill move through her, even under the hot morning sun. The only place? Darla nodded. She went through a lot, you know. The loss of her son, the cancer, but that room gave her peace. That night, Melissa stood in the hallway outside the room with the mirror and looked at the door, closed tight. She wasn't afraid, not the way she'd been weeks before. Something had changed. There was sorrow in the air now, not menace. A deep, aching stillness. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. The room was dim, lit only by the last orange rays of sunset slipping through the bay window. The mirror stood in its place like a sentinel, quiet, unmoving. Melissa lit a candle. Then another. She didn't speak. She didn't even know what to say. But in her chest, something unfolded. She sat on the floor. I know you don't want to leave, she said after a long silence. And I don't think you're here to hurt us. But I have a daughter. She's just learning the world. And I can't let her grow up with whatever this is. A breeze passed through the room. The curtains shifted, though the windows were shut. Melissa stood, crossed to the mirror. Her reflection looked hollowed out. Eyes sunken with sleeplessness, skin a little too pale. But in the glass, just over her shoulder, she thought she saw a second figure. A woman, soft-featured, tired, watching, not threatening, just unsure. Andrew agreed to call someone the next day. A woman named Carla Navarro, recommended by a mutual friend of Melissa's from her yoga circle. Carla was not dramatic. No showmanship. She didn't wear beads or crystals. She arrived in jeans and a gray linen blouse, carrying only a bag of incense, a small voice recorder, and a leather notebook. She asked permission before entering every room. She never spoke above a whisper. Ava took to her immediately, smiling and reaching for her fingers. They started in the living room, then the kitchen. Carla took notes quietly, nodded a lot. But when they moved upstairs, to the room with the mirror, something shifted in her demeanor. She didn't enter right away. "She's here," Carla said softly. "She's not confused. She's holding on. She doesn't know she's gone." Andrew frowned. "What does she want?" Carla turned, her eyes heavy with sympathy. "To finish something. To say goodbye. She loved deeply. That kind of love doesn't dissolve easily." She lit a cone of sandalwood incense in the corner, placed a candle at the foot of the mirror, and sat cross-legged on the carpet. "You'll need to speak to her," she said to Melissa. "Not like a ghost. Like a woman." That night, Melissa stayed up after Andrew and Ava went to sleep. She brewed chamomile tea, took the baby monitor with her, and went upstairs alone. The mirror was waiting. She didn't light candles this time. She didn't need them. She sat cross-legged in the dim light, facing the glass. Her reflection looked steadier now. "Kelly," she said gently, "I'm sorry no one was here for you at the end. I wish someone had stayed. But I think you stayed for yourself." A gust of cool air touched her cheek. "I promise we'll love this house. We'll fill it with laughter. You don't have to watch over us. You don't have to stay." The mirror fogged, slowly, like breath again. Melissa watched as 3 words traced into the glass, letter by letter, as if written by an invisible fingertip. "Thank you, Ava." Then the room grew still. The fog faded. And for the first time, the mirror reflected only one figure. The next morning, the house felt different. Not in any dramatic way. There were no sudden bursts of sunlight, no rainbows through the windows. Just quiet. Clean quiet. Natural quiet. The drawer in the kitchen stayed closed. The humming stopped. Ava no longer stared at corners. Even Andrew, who never spoke much about what happened, walked through the house with a looser jaw, a deeper breath. He smiled more. He slept through the night. They turned the guest room into a reading space. Melissa kept the mirror, cleaned it gently every Sunday, and placed a single white flower on the sill. Sometimes, when the breeze moves just right through the curtains, the smell of lavender still lingers. Faint and quick, like a memory too delicate to hold for long. Years later, when Ava had grown old enough to speak clearly, she asked her mother why they never moved again, why they chose to stay in that house so long. Melissa smiled, ran her fingers through her daughter's hair, and looked up toward the second floor. "Because someone gave us permission." And Ava, in that intuitive way children have, simply nodded like she already knew who. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story.